It's 4 o'clock on a Thursday, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi's Quarantini Happy Hour. Woo! Yeah, baby, here we go. And thank you, fake audience. Thank you, fake band. And hello, real audience. Let's go see who's in that chat room today. All right, the gang is just starting to show up in the chat room. Where the heck is everybody? So far, we've got Akira Canyon, Martin Gravel, Dan Weber, Daryl Berman, Nancy Colell, Il Rosso Emil. Hello, you guys. How are you? Let's see who else is going to show up here. I'm going to try and sit up straight today. I'm going to slump. Darren Moss, Andre Stepanian, Jesse J. Peck, Rick Cabot Podmore, Bob Gunnerfeld, Robert Orzechowski, Ian Shortall, Darren Wilson. Hello, you guys. I'm watching over the top of this, well, off to the side of the screen out there. There's a bunny rabbit that's really close to my tomato plant. I have no idea if rabbits eat tomatoes, but I'm guessing they probably will. Let's see, who else? Jesse J. Peck. Glad to see me back. Where was I? Did I go somewhere? Hello, Pierre. Richard Carr, Dan Weber. Did I go somewhere? What do you mean, glad to see you back? Did I go somewhere that I'm unaware of? Yeah, you're right. Rabbit plus tomatoes definitely equals danger. Yep. Yeah, I'm allowed to relocate gophers, but not rabbits. Man, oh man, would my wife get cranky. Hello, Pete Mason. When's the official breakup from us? Are you going to give it to us softly? I don't know yet. I'm trying to get all the work done. I got to say, ever since my wife got back at the end of May, I am definitely not working the 16-hour days anymore because she needs constant attention. Actually, she's very low maintenance. I disappeared on screen yesterday. I did? Oh, you got things were glitchy yesterday. That's right. Yeah, so I don't know when I'm going to start working less days or doing the show less days because of the road rally. Just before I went live on the air today, I was looking at what they call the sponsor deck, which is the document that goes out to the sponsors, and I owe some people in New York my editorial review and some changing out some photos and stuff, and I should have gotten to that today, but I didn't. There are many other things I should have gotten to today, and I didn't. Yay! Hopefully we have no glitches today. I don't know what the hell was going on yesterday. Hello, Cass. How are you? Hello, Alex Dillon. But now that the gang is all here, I will tell you about some stuff that's been going on around Taxi World headquarters. So Isaac, who has been with the company, I believe, for about 3+ years, just departed from Taxi. Monday was his last day. Hello, John Hemingway. Peter Rahill, if I didn't say hello to you already. Isaac has moved on, and he was writing all the listings, so I'm very, very happy to report that Bria is now full-time at Taxi again. See, we're kind of like the Hotel California. You can check out. You can even move to Kentucky, but you can never leave. When Isaac first announced that he was departing, I was like, oh man, who are we going to have write the listings? Because it's extremely hard to do. There is no other job anywhere on the planet that can train you for writing listings at Taxi. Takes a certain amount of writing skills. It takes a pretty big knowledge of music. It takes the ability to research references and get them very right. It takes understanding the kind of the members and how you guys think, and it takes understanding music supervisors, music libraries, record labels, all those things. And I remember hanging up the phone with Isaac going, oh crap, what am I going to do? Hello, Ronald Schultz and Spiritual and Tony. How are you guys? And I thought, wow, this is a problem. And with the rally coming up, I don't need to start writing listings. And I know that Tom and Eric have been very busy in the A&R department, and they wouldn't be able to take that on. And then literally like 3 minutes after I got off the phone with Isaac, I went, ding, 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 I've got an idea. I remember some time ago, before Bria announced that, well, we knew for quite some time that she was going to be moving, getting married and moving to Kentucky. And she had mentioned to me, you know, would it be possible for me to work remotely? And I said, not loving the idea of remote. But you know what? This is a good thing that came from the quarantine, is we learned that we can all work very effectively remotely. And so as much as I would prefer to have Bria under the roof with us, she is now working remotely from Kentucky. She's 3 hours ahead of us. So she is now writing the listings. And I've got to say, it really only took her about 3, 4, 5 days to get up to speed. And I am super, super pleased with the listings she's been writing. They take less editorial effort on my part every day, which is a very welcome thing. Hello, Holly Leslie. Hello, Lucian. Hello, Joseph. So anyway, all's well that ends well there. So then, shortly after that, literally like 72 hours later, I found out, and this one was a heartbreaker, that Ariana's got a family medical emergency back home, and she needs to leave Taxi to go home and step up and deal with that family medical emergency. That's all I can really say. And I'm heartbroken. The whole staff is heartbroken, but we certainly understand. And so Bria is now taking back a bunch of the media stuff that she was doing that had transferred to Ariana. And Liz is now officially the producer of Taxi TV. So let's have a big welcome for Liz. Anyway, yeah, we've been thrilled that Liz joined us about a year ago, I think. Hello, Liz. And that's, you know, she's been hanging out before any of this was happening in the background. Liz was already hanging out in the chat room anyway and watching the show and participating a little here and there. So Liz is taking on the responsibility of producing the show, and she's going to have to learn how to put up with me. I'm sure she'll do great. Yeah, well, I'm going to try and do as many Quarantinis as I can. I haven't even really seriously had a minute to think about at what point I will have to cut back on the Quarantinis. And I won't stop doing them altogether. That's a promise. I mean, there may be, you know, like maybe the week right before the rally or something like that I just won't have any time. But yeah, Bria is the prodigal daughter. And we're grateful for that. You know, I mean, as you guys, I think most of you know, she was a Taxi member while she was still in high school. And then after graduating high school, moved to LA, and we gave her a temp job doing outbound phone calls to remind people about the upcoming road rally. And I had a very strict policy about hiring members, family members, except for my wife, or friends. And luckily I don't have any friends, so I don't have to worry about that. But, you know, Bria was a member and became a friend over the years. Bria and her dad were very, very instrumental in they were like the head volunteers at the road rally every year. Hello, Edmund. How are you? Um, so because of that, she knew a lot about the company and just really, took off as a staff member, and we loved having her. And now we love having her back full time. Whatever happened to the taxi staff edition? I'm not sure what that is. What is the taxi staff edition? Oh, you mean doing an episode where we go around and meet all the staff members? Is that what you're talking about? Um, I did hire a friend as a screener, but the screeners aren't really. Technically now under California law they are staff, um, but they're really more like independent contractors. And frankly, I wasn't all that comfortable doing it, but the guy that we hired as the screener is, he's a force in the industry, and he's a hit songwriter and super duper well connected, all that great stuff. And we really needed yet another person who could do like label pop and label urban stuff. And he's fantastic at both of those things. So we brought him on, and hopefully I don't live to regret the day. Um, so the taxi staff edition, if you're talking about one where we walked around, where I was planning on walking around the office and introducing you guys to every staff member, kind of hard to do during the quarantine when we're actually not at the office. Although yesterday, I think about 2/3 of the staff was at the office. Oh, also, we hired a new young lady named Randy who will be taking Liz's place in member services. And so my wife has been at the office training Randy. I think Liz has done some training with Randy. I could be wrong about that. Liz has been getting trained by Ariana. Um, so yeah, yesterday Liz was at the office, my wife was at the office, Ariana was at the office, Angel was at the office, and our new staffer, whose name again is Randy with an I, was at the office, and I was at the office for a few hours. So it's kind of nice seeing everybody there. I think technically, I don't know if we're breaking the law or not, but we're certainly not considered under regulations, California's current regulations, to be an essential business. Although um, getting everybody trained up, the only way it can really take place is at the office. No, it's not nearly, it's impossible to train people over a wire. It really is. The paint job my wife did at the office looked really good. I gotta say, I checked that out like 3 weeks ago, and I've got to compliment my wife for somebody that's only recently learned how to paint. I thought she did a superb job, and I didn't have to fix anything. I didn't even like flinch. Everything was really good. So, good job, Mrs. Lasco. Anyway, so that's what's been going on in our world. Man, oh man, it's just been like a little roller coaster over at Taxi. Yeah, Tony's right. This is so full of ups and downs in only 9 minutes. Yeah. Um, aw, Nancy says you're all absolutely essential to us in the chat room. Thanks, Nance. Um, yeah, it's so weird. I heard somebody say on the news last night, I want to get this right, but I can't remember what kind of business it was that was considered not. Oh, and again, I don't. This is not political. I'm not endorsing one way or another. I just, you know, thought this was funny. Ironic, I guess, is a better word. Somebody on the news said, "So let me get this straight. We can't go to church because that's not essential. Yet pot shops in California and probably other states as well, marijuana dispensaries and liquor stores are essential, but not churches." So there you go. Um, maybe they. Oh, there's an idea. Maybe they could sell weed and booze at church, and then people could just come in to buy that and then stick around and say a prayer or two. See, you got to be able to think on your feet in these times. Thanks, Joseph. Yes, we are getting some great listings. Um, Yeah, I've got to say, different spirits. The quarantine has not hurt the listings. If anything, it's helped the listings. Yeah, we just got a whole bunch more um, from two independent films, and those listings are running. Um, Outdoor church services are the only thing in this part of California. I think, yeah, our rabbi at our synagogue is doing outdoor services for like up to 50 people. Same thing in Melbourne. Ian Shortall says alcohol shops open, but pretty much everything else is closed. So you have a bunch of drunk people window shopping. There you go. Um, yeah, marijuana shops. Can't believe they're always full around here. Where do you live, Martin? A church just did a service in Walmart. There you go. What a great idea. Many years ago, when one of my older daughters was in college. She went to, I can't remember the name of the college now. Gee, you'd think after writing all those checks I would know. Anyway, the college was right near Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, which houses a big federal prison, but is also close to Lewisburg. It's got the prison and a really huge Walmart, and it's close to Amish country, or at least there's some Amish outpost near there. So it's pretty cool when you would go to that giant Walmart, which of course we did, to buy bedding and what have you for our daughter's college experience. You pull into the parking lot at Walmart, and they're all the horses and buggies parked in the parking lot. It's the only Walmart parking lot I've ever seen that had places to hitch your horse in the parking lot, just like the good old days. Martin lives in Quebec, or Quebec. Wow, stuff is flying in. Hang on, I'm going to scroll up and read some of that. Yeah, drunk people window shopping. That would be a good lyric about a red light district during Fleet Week when the sailors are in town. In the South, as long as we have copper tubing, I think you mean copper tubing, not Cooper tubing, and a large copper pot, we're good. Oh man, dispensaries are everywhere here, and there's so many on South Broadway that it's been dubbed the Green Mile. That's funny. Let's see. In Melbourne, supermarkets, pharmacies, gas stations are still open. One person allowed out to shop for 1 hour a day. 1 hour a day allowed to exercise in masks. Curfew 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. Um, Robert Rosachowski says that Walmart church service have a dress code: no gut exposures, tracksuits, or hanging pants. Very funny. Uh, yeah, Amsterdam, the red light district, would be a great place to do drunk window shopping. Excuse me, a little post nasal drip going on here. Very classy, aren't I? All right, so another swig of vitamin water, and I'm going to answer some questions that you guys were kind enough to post in the comment section under yesterday's video. And if you are new to the show and haven't yet subscribed to our channel, hit that red button. It's free, and only good things come with subscribing to the channel. Also, be kind and give us a thumbs up. Hello, X-Rash Gates, award-winning television. You must be talking about this show, right? uh, Also, butcher, baker, fruit and vegetable grocers are open here too. You know, it's funny. We're kind of like in the semi state of being quarantined right now in Southern California. Um, I mean, you go out on the street, there are people everywhere. The traffic is almost at normal volume, not quite as bad during rush hour, I don't believe. Um, but you know, you go to strip malls and wherever, and it's just like nothing has changed. I mean, stores are open. Um, I'm trying to think, like hair salons and nail salons, and I believe, I don't know, I think gyms are shut down again. Movie theaters were just starting to open up, and I believe those are shut down again, which really bumps me out. You know, the only really big change, I guess, other than working remotely and being around the house pretty much day and night, for me personally or for Deb and I, is there's a movie theater about 5 minutes from our house that has the big, comfy, reclining leather seats with the cup holders in it and a tray table that swings out and excellent food and incredible picture on the screen, incredible audio. And so we tried to make it a weekly thing. I would say probably 3 weeks out of every month, we would go to the movie theater, typically on Wednesday nights. We haven't done that, and we miss it. Um, the fun with the Quarantini Happy Hour is the interactivity. Why, yes, it is. Uh, and the Emmy for Best Fart Joke goes to Taxi Quarantini. Uh, we're in opening 4.5, which you mean like 4.5 stars out of 5? I don't know how to pronounce that word, Darren. Abattoirs? Abattoirs and big refrigerated workplaces are a source of transmission. Okay. So they're cutting down workforce on those. Now we have people hoarding meat in the supermarkets. Interesting. Anyway, okay. Let me get out this sheet. You ever have one of those senior moments where you print something out? Um, I can hear the printer is up in the loft. It's about, I don't know, 25 to 50 feet away from me up in the loft at our house. You can hear it when you're printing. You can hear it no matter where you're at in the house. You know, clunk, clunk, clunk. So I printed this out yesterday. I went into the comment section and copied and pasted them into a Word doc and then printed them out. So I'd have them for today's show. I couldn't find that document anywhere. I have cleaned off my desk, which is a 6 foot by 6 foot square, like everyday breakfast, lunch, and dinner table at our house that sits right between the kitchen and the family room. We have an open concept room. And so I've commandeered this table now for the last several months. And I was cleaning it off today because my wife told me last night, she goes, yeah, it's getting a little tiring seeing all your clutter. I mean, the table looks like a bomb went off. Um, and so I cleared off probably about 100 different sheets of paper with anything from resumes to financial stuff to internal emails that I had to print so I wouldn't forget to get to them, blah, 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 blah. And I stacked all that stuff up and took it up to the loft where our shredder is, to put it in the to be shredded pile. Uh, and I thought maybe that document that I printed yesterday is in that pile. So I went up there and went through that. Not there. So I printed it out again, and I am abattoirs. Wow, got it. Okay. Um, so here we go, and I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up because I believe that the ones at the bottom were the first ones printed. So the first one is from our friend Paul House, who I don't see in the chat room today. Um, That's kind of a bummer, but hopefully he'll watch the show when he wakes up because he's probably sleeping. I believe he's in London or somewhere in the UK. So his question would be he'd like to be understanding the emotion single theme in a track, keeping it simple whilst keeping it interesting. Definitely from the UK because he said whilst. That's a word Americans can barely even say. Whilst. Whilst. I turn it into a two-syllable word. Excuse me. So, how do you explain keeping the emotion and the theme the same throughout while keeping it interesting? Developmental arc is the answer, Paul, for when you wake up and watch this, as I'm sure you will. You don't want to have all the sections that a typical song would have with, like a 35-second intro and then a verse and then a pre-chorus and then a chorus and then, maybe even a little interlude and then back to the second verse and then the pre-chorus and then the chorus again and then a bridge and then the chorus. Too many changes. You also don't want to treat it like you're scoring the picture because the editors, and primarily this music, instrumental cues, primarily, I would say 80% of them probably get used in reality TV shows, maybe travel shows, to some extent dramatic television, to some extent TV promos, to some extent TV commercials. They're usually used, let's say a cue is 90 seconds long, and that's probably a good average time. They're typically used in one scene and typically only for seconds. So while it might be 90 seconds long, you might only hear 12 seconds of it or 23 seconds or 4 seconds. So the editors like the same thing to repeat from beginning to end, and there is an exception to that, which I'll talk about momentarily. They like the same thing to repeat over and over, but what they want is kind of variations on that repetition. So you start out with the basic motif, the basic musical theme of the piece. And then fairly shortly later, like 4 bars or 8 bars into it, you add other instrumentation just to kick it up a notch. Basically, if there were a timeline on a graph, it would be, here, I'll get this right. There's the start, and you bang right in on the A section, excuse me. And then you add another instrument or two to the A section to kick it up, and it sounds like, oh, it's building. So it maintains the interest without changing the mood and without changing the melody or the feel or the emotion. Everything stays static, but it has ramped up a little and become a little more interesting. And then maybe another 8 bars in, you build it up with some more instrumentation, and then boom, here comes the exception. You drop it back down, probably to what I would call a bridge, which is the B section, which is some sort of derivative of the A section. Maybe you invert the chord progression or something like that, and do that for 8 bars, just so the editor's got something else that sounds like, it goes together with the rest of it, but it's different. And then you come out of that B section, and then you repeat what you did at the front, which is you start out a little skinny, and you keep it there for 4 bars or 8 bars or whatever, and then you add another layer, and then another layer, and then boom, the big ending most of the time. Variations on a single motif equals developmental arc, and key changes are most definitely a no-no. There might be rare exceptions. There are always rare exceptions to everything, but yeah, Cass is absolutely right. It would be unusual to hear a key change. I'm trying to think of an example of when you might. And a key change, might be good for taking the emotion to a different place. It's so you could use a key change for that, to like ramp up. This is more serious now, or whatever it is that the emotion is that you're trying to emphasize. By throwing in a key change might be a good tool to do that with, but it's rarely used. I can't say that I've never heard it, but I've rarely heard it. So That's how you keep it simple. Some people, when they're first getting into cues, will make the mistake, and it's kind of a rite of passage, if you will. It's a launching pad for people who are getting into the cue thing. They'll take a loop from Fruity Loops or somewhere, and they will just loop it over and over and over and let that run for 90 seconds and then give it a button or stinger, non-faded ending, boom, on the end. And that's not bad, but it's not as good as somebody that really understands the developmental arc of a cue. And so it's as simple as that. And frankly, some people don't even put in the B section. They might just go with the A section all the way through. But here's why it's so important that you stay on that one emotion and that singular motif. And that is when you're scoring to picture and you have a scene change. I'm trying to think, let's say Kim Kardashian, I love picking on the Kardashians. Let's say Kimmy and Kanye are in the kitchen, and he's just told her that he's going to run for president, which he is. And she's like, "Are you kidding me? How the heck would you have the time for that?" And so there's some sort of attention cue because there's tension between them. She's ticked off at him because he's not being a very good dad, or he's not being a very good husband, or he's not mowing the lawn, he's not doing enough around the house as it is, and now he's going to get busier and going to be out on the road all the time campaigning. So there's a tension cue. And she storms out of the kitchen. So the mood is the same all the way through there. If you were scoring and the next scene was when she walks out of the kitchen, he snickers to himself like he thinks it's funny that she's pissed off about that. So then there might be some comedic music that the scoring composer would write a comedic section of the score. Well, when a video editor is editing a show, they don't have anybody to turn to and say, "Can you score me, a piece that goes from serious tension, dramatic tension, to comedic." They've just got to reach into the library and pick out a tension cue that works well in the scene and then end it on that moment where she stomps out of the kitchen and boom, there's where the buttoned ending is, or the stinger ending. She walks out of the kitchen, slams the door as she walks out. Sorry. Boom, and the music ends on the door slam. And then the next edit you see is back to Kanye in the kitchen snickering. Well, they're going to go into the production music library, or one of several that they've got in their electronic bins that are at their disposal to use on the show. And the next thing they're going to search for is comedic dramedy, okay, or quirky dramedy, something comical and funny, that is going to signify that Kanye thinks it's funny. She's all pissed off that he's going to run for president. So hopefully that explains it. That you guys, did I explain that well? So you've got to give the editors, each cue has to be one thing, because if you give them a cue, here's a good addendum to that. If you give them a cue that goes through the transition of what was the first thing I said? A tension cue, a dramatic tension cue. And let's say that you were to go to another emotional place within your cue. You go to that, funny dramedy part. Well, that's not going to line up with what they're working on. It might line up it would line up if you were scoring to picture, because you would score that change to happen at the moment that the action changes and the emotion changes. But a video editor just has to reach into his bucket of cues and go, okay, I need this kind of cue for this section and that kind of cue for that section, and boom, put them together at the edit point. Buffering again? Really? Anybody else getting buffering? Kanye just bought a ranch near Cody, Wyoming. I'll bet you, first of all, a ranch in Wyoming, who wouldn't want that? But there's probably another reason, and that is because Wyoming is the most tax favorable state in America. So if you're setting up a business, you want to incorporate or do your LLC in Wyoming. However, if you, and I know this for a fact because I've spoken to lawyers and accountants about it, if you set up a business and you incorporate or do the LLC in the state of Wyoming, but you are operating the business in California, you're going to pay California taxes. So even though the corporation is in a tax-friendly state, if you're doing the majority of your business, like if Taxi were incorporated in Wyoming, even if I had a house in Wyoming, which if anybody wants to donate to the Lasco Ranch in Wyoming Fund, I will gladly take your money, or real estate donation would be great. But even if your primary residence is there, if I lived there 9 months out of the year, but my staff worked out of an office in Calabasas, California, we would still be paying California taxes. Nothing like a good, healthy stream. Yep, I made that point yesterday. Wow, it's so weird. All right, anyway, I think we can show that comment from Rick. It's slightly distasteful, but certainly within the bounds of what we do here. Well, automatically held for review. Ooh, I meant to not delete that. Anyway, sorry about that, Rick. I'm not sure if I deleted it or Liz deleted it, but yeah, that wasn't in such bad taste. Okay, the next question is from our very own Dan Weber, who stands up and raises his hand, says, I've got a question. Well, there's Dan right now. Dan wants to know, I'd like to hear you talk about why it's important to keep feeding the pipeline with tracks. And also why it's a good idea to have an album ready to go for a library that likes your music. Okay, I'm going to take those one at a time because I probably won't remember the second half of the question unless I address it on its own. So why is it important to keep feeding the pipeline? Let's say that you are the Twinkie manufacturer. Your job, your factory's job is to manufacture Twinkies. Now imagine if like once every third day you shut down the assembly line and no more Twinkies are rolling off the end and dropping into the boxes to be shipped out. So you have hurt the supply chain. That's all it is. It is keep feeding the pipeline because you want to be getting as many pieces out there as possible into as many music libraries as you can, because some will turn out to be productive for you, others may not. It depends. Generally, libraries, sometimes you might get rejected by a library, and it doesn't mean your music is bad by any stretch. You may have the greatest, composition, greatest production in the world, but if it's a library that primarily works on reality shows and you've got a big orchestral piece that sounds like it would be really well suited for a trailer, then that's not going to be of much use to the library that specializes in, cute little instrumental cues for reality shows. So that library owner might hear it, go, wow, this is really impressive. I just don't think I need it. Nobody's going to ever license this from me, so they don't want to take your piece of music off the market by putting it into their catalog where it's never going to get used. And they don't, frankly, want to go to the trouble of signing that piece because there is paperwork involved if it's not going to make them money. They are in the business of earning income, and when they make a buck, you make a buck. So that's why you want to keep feeding the pipeline and get as much of your music into as many different libraries as you can, because one library may have a slow period for 6 months because of the quarantine. Another library may have a booming 6 months because they're doing a lot of TV promos for all those shows they're repeating. So when the fall season ramps up and new TV shows are coming, except not this year probably, um, they need a bunch of music for that. So pretty much you're going to see a lot of new sitcoms and a lot of new TV dramas. So the libraries that would supply music to those types of shows are going to see an uptick in demand. And it's a pretty fair statement. I can't say this is without exception, but it's a pretty fair statement to say that most libraries don't do it all. They tend to find a certain type of client or certain types of clients and service their needs. Now, if you're talking a gigantic library that has 250,000 tracks and a staff of 50 people working there and a bank of sales guys on telephones taking orders from supervisors in reality shows, that's like a mega library. They may, in fact, have every kind of music conceivable because, first of all, they have many, many, many types of clients. Second of all, they generally are distributed on a worldwide basis, often through smaller libraries that, for instance, we've got a library that we work with in Israel. We've got several in the UK, several foreign libraries we work with, but I'm going to talk about the guy in Israel right now. So his library, even though it's mostly Middle Eastern music, is distributed on a global basis by Universal. Okay, so Universal then makes his music, which is in many cases your music, available in France, in Italy, in Germany, in China, South America, wherever, through the Universal distribution system. So his Middle Eastern music goes into a subcategorized giant catalog and is heard all over the world. Well, the same is true in reverse, that anything else that's in that giant universal catalog, the guy in Israel, has access to as well. So if one of his clients says, I need a piece of Asian music, we're working on a TV show which takes place in Lebanon, but in this scene, the people in the scene go to a sushi restaurant. And so we need some Japanese music for the background of the sushi restaurant. Well, that library in Israel would have all the Middle Eastern music they need for the show that takes place ostensibly in Lebanon, but he probably wouldn't have the Asian music, nor would he be wise to sign any Japanese or Asian music, because the number of times he's going to get asked for that are really, really rare, practically nil. So why would he take the time to do the research on the composer and make sure everything is kosher and all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and do the paperwork and sign that and get to know the composer for a piece of music that's probably going to sit there and never get used? So in this case, he would reach into the vast catalog of Universal, which is probably in total somewhere close to between 250,000 and 500,000 tracks globally, and find what he or she needs there. Okay, so that explains why you want to keep feeding the pipeline as many tracks in as many different places as you can, because the tides will ebb and flow with demand in each of those catalogs that you're in. Now, as to the second half of that question, why is it a good idea to have an album ready to go for a library that likes your music? I don't know that you actually asked that question exactly the right way, and I know that's kind of rude of me to say you didn't ask your question the right way, Dan, but it's not that you have to necessarily have an album ready to go, and I know what Dan's talking about. He's talking about, let's say you create a dramedy track, and it gets forwarded by taxi to a production music library, and the library loves it, and they send you an email or pick up a phone and call you and say, Dan, we love that dramedy track. Do you have any more of that stuff? Because right now we're working on a bunch of new compilations that we're putting out, and we would love to do a full album of your dramedy stuff. And that's the point where your chest gets tight and you go, oh no, I don't have a full album. But here's the problem. In the way you ask the question, it sounds like you would need full albums of certain styles ready to go. And that could be a good thing, but it probably won't be, and here's why. Is when the library reaches out to you and says, we love your dramedy piece, we'd like to hear more of what you've got. If you've done a bunch of dramedy that didn't have xylophone in it, let's say, and it wasn't, that quirky kind of goofy dramedy, it was a little more tame than that, and they say they want to hear all that stuff. And if you were, a very responsible young man, and you had a full album of dramedy ready to go, they might say, we would love to hear more of your dramedy. However, do you have stuff that's a little quirkier, a little funnier, maybe with marimbas or a xylophone or a calliope, goofy? And the album that you made trying to be prescient about what they might ask you for wouldn't be correct for that. Could you go in and surgically alter it and maybe make it to what they need? Yeah. So the correct answer is when they reach out to you and say, do you have any other stuff like that? Rather than making a full album's worth that may or may not be right for what they asked for, say, I certainly can. Give me feedback on what you like about that piece or any other changes you'd want me to make. I'm going to crank out 3 tracks this week and send them to you and make sure that you like the direction I've gone in. And if you do, I will have the rest of the full album in your hands in a week. There you go. Good answer, Mikey. Yeah. Man, I'm kind of bummed out. I've been missing all the good chit-chat in the chat room. So I hope that answers your question. Anytime you're making music in advance of somebody asking you for something, you always run the risk, and I think it's a pretty high risk, that it's not going to be exactly what they need. So you're better off just saying, I can get you 2 or 3 samples of that. Give me a little feedback, a little input, and I'll get you 2 or 3 samples post-haste, and then if you like them, then I can crank out the rest. And they would probably go, great plan. Because it would be extremely rare that they would need that full album of stuff in like 24 hours. Okay. All right, this one's from Peter Rahill, and I'm not sure I completely understand it. I've actually read this question about 4 times, so pay attention, Mr. Rahill, because I'm definitely going to you for clarification. And the question is, I'd like to hear people discuss when, why, and how you and others decide to make a mix sound like a band recorded live, with instruments and voice each having their spot somewhere on the clock face, panning techniques, where, when, and why you might bring a solo or specific instruments to the center, even moving stuff / voice around, not panning for effects like Ronan taught us about at the road rally. Is there, I don't really understand that, Peter. If I wanted to make a band sound like it was live, I wouldn't take a studio album and try and make it sound live by where I pan things and that sort of stuff. So I'm not sure. Are we talking about, let's say, a regular, let's say a ZZ Top song, okay? Something that's like, pretty pure rock and roll, ZZ Top. If I recorded that in a studio, I wouldn't attempt to make it live. But you're talking about kind of the where do you pan stuff? Do you pan it like I know what you're saying. I'm trying to think of a better way to say it. But what you're saying is like when you if you were going to simulate an orchestral recording, using stuff that's coming out of a box. You would want to have the timpani where the timpani would be on stage. You'd want to have the violins where the violins normally are on stage. So you could shut your eyes as the listener. See that? I did that for effect. That was my pose for the day, Liz, right there. If trying to do the same thing with the band, you could. I mean, there's no reason not to. There's not a lot of reason to do it. And I'm not sure that you could take a studio recording and just by merely kind of, spacing people out on the horizon as if they were playing live, But yeah, the drummer is going to be in the center of the stage. The bass player could be anywhere in the stage, but the bass is most likely going to appear to be coming out of both speakers and therefore by, kind of a de facto mono sound or signal or pan. And then you've got, a guitar player that's kind of on stage left, and you've got another guy playing acoustic guitar that's kind of on stage right. And then when the solo comes up, the electric guitar player that's on stage left might come to the middle and walk up to the front of the stage a little bit. So I know that that's what you're going for. Just, if you're desirous of doing that, do it like you would see them standing on a stage. Not too hard to imagine. However, when you're getting into making pop records or other kinds of records that aren't, you could do, like a Ariana Grande pop record, on stage, certainly. But pop records are a little more complex and a little, there are all these little parts that make up the whole. It's not as straight ahead as rock and roll, where you've got these 5 people on a stage and this is where they stand and this is what they do. With a pop record, you might have a little synth lick that only comes up, in a couple of bars right before you go into the chorus, like a little bit of ear candy teasing you into the chorus, right? So that would be hard to simulate in a live scenario. They do it, but the keyboard player could be playing a B3, well, not in a pop record probably, but the keyboard player could be playing, some like bell tones off a synth 1 minute, could be doing string parts off the same synth or another synth another minute. Each of those parts would have a different place in the audio spectrum, and I'm not talking about the EQ spectrum, but, kind of the horizon spectrum. So it'd be hard to do that, and I don't think it's even necessary to do it. Surely a classical track won't be returned for incorrect panning. It could be, because there are some people that do stuff that's just completely so far out of the norm. I mean, nobody's going to say, oh, you didn't have the timpani where the percussion section would be in an orchestra normally. However, if you do something like, with everything pans in such a cockamamie fashion that it's immediately like, whoa, what's that? Yeah, it could get returned for that. Okay, so I want to answer the second half. I hope that helped, Peter. I hope that was maybe more contemporary song mixes have everything equally on both sides of the stereo. Yeah, well, that is at the root of mixing in general, whether it's pop or it's rock or it's urban or anything. As I've stated before, remember my little backyard thing where I was using the backyard as the the oral horizon, if you will. Yeah, you want balance. I mean, if you have a mix, let's say you've got a chicken pick and electric guitar part. I can't believe it's almost 5 o'clock. Where did this hour go? Okay, if you've got a chicken pick and electric guitar part, and you have another instrument that also contributes to the rhythmic feel of the mix and the production, you would be very wise to have them panned opposite each other so that they're balanced and playing off of each other. If you put chicken picking guitar over here and rhythmic piano over here, the listener is going to be pulled over there for the whole mix. So you want to make it easy for the brain and the ears and the listener to digest it. And by giving balance, having things come back, there I am, having things that complement each other and add balance to the mix is just generally a good rule of thumb. Of course, there are always exceptions, but there shouldn't be many. Remember the good old days of like creamed Israeli gears or some of, like Sergeant Pepper's. You could have like a drum kit full on pan to the left and the bass on the right. Well, those were the early days of stereo, and they were like experimenting, going, wow, this is fun. I can put, Ringo over there and I can put Paul over there. The listeners are going to freak out when they hear that because back, a year ago, everything came right down the middle. They quickly realized that balance was better. All right. So Peter says, yeah, between my answer and the answer from everybody else in the chat. Right, that was modern mixing then. You're right, Cass. But that style of mixing, I think, quickly went out the window because a lot of, you know why? Tommy Dowd actually told me this. At the time when records transitioned to stereo, which was probably in the pop or rock world around 66, I would say, somewhere around there, late 60s. Anyway, a lot of people still had record players that were mono. So by panning the drums full left and the bass full right and other stuff at dead center at 6 o'clock and other stuff at 10 or at 12 and other stuff at 10 and 2, when you sum it all to mono, you get a whole different balance. So they quickly realized, okay, that didn't work. Yeah, jazz records in the 60s were like that. Pan the drums left, piano right, sax in the middle. Yeah, they would try and recreate what was going out in the room, in the studio room. I actually did a record with a Jamaican jazz guitarist, Ernest Ranglin. Do any of you jazz guys remember Ernest Ranglin? And it was probably the first like heavyweight jazz musician that I worked with, and I knew that I had to make that record sound like everybody was in the same room and they were all playing off of each other. I didn't want it to sound dead. I didn't want it to each instrument to sound isolated. And Ernest Ranglin walked back in the control room on the first playback, and he said to me, "You don't understand how jazz should be recorded and presented." And he was right. And so that was the day I learned that lesson. All right, I'm going to save this other stuff for tomorrow's show. I was thinking about not doing a show tomorrow because I just got an email right before today's show saying that my Roadcaster is arriving via UPS by tomorrow. Very exciting that the Roadcaster is coming because I think I will finally be able to elegantly play music down a wire, speak into the microphone, and take phone calls and have them go directly into the mixer, and have my effects ready to go at nothing but a finger's touch when the Roadcaster gets here. So I was all excited thinking, I'm going to skip the Quarantini tomorrow and just play with that thing all day. But you know what? It could very easily show up at 5 p.m. So I will be here tomorrow. Well, thank you, Springs. She said it was a good show. Oh, Dave Merkel, quick thank you for the recommendation. I got The War of Art, finished it today. Awesome book. Yeah, everybody... Remember, Stephen Pressfield, the guy who wrote The War of Art, Do the Work, and the other one that I can't think of right now. Amazing books. Literally, you have to read those books. It's not a recommendation. It's I demand, I implore you to read those books. You will become more successful as a musician in general and more successful as a taxi member by reading these books. They're very quick. They're like 100 pages. They're very well written, very easy to read and digest. And when you finish them all, and take notes, scribble notes inside, like the cover and the flap, wherever you can. Make post-it notes with some of his more brilliant. Literally every page has something brilliant on it. But his main theme in The War of Art, which is the first of those 3 books, is all about resistance, and that is the force that keeps you from doing what you should be doing, the force that keeps you from accomplishing what you should accomplish. And he identifies where resistance comes from and talks about how to overcome it. And then in the second book, Do the Work, he gets even more in depth on that. Richard Carr says, Do the Work is a great read. Tell us how I mix jazz toms or jazz tomorrow. I'm not sure what you mean, Alex. Tomorrow. Remind me. Here, I'll make a note. How to mix jazz. I had this conversation with Ken Calais the other night. We were hanging out, just doing a friend-to-friend chat, not actually in public. He and I both feel extremely grateful that we have both had many, many times in our careers where we got to do live recordings. He worked at Wally Heider, which had one of the 3 best remote trucks in the country at the time. So he got to do a lot of live stuff. Oh, by the way, after the show the other day, Ken sent me the board mixes from Joni Mitchell's Mile of Aisles album, her live album that he recorded. He sent me the stuff that was like his personal mix in the remote truck. So, yeah, I've got that. And I can't share it, I'm sorry to say. I'm sure that would get Ken in trouble, get me in trouble, and the show probably kicked off the air forever. But, Joni, we love you. Anyway, Ken and I were talking about how incredibly fortunate we both are that we've recorded orchestral stuff. We've recorded big bands on big stages. We've recorded rock bands in live scenarios. I once got to record a 100-voice choir and an 88-piece orchestra in one of the biggest churches in America. Oh, it also had the 2nd largest German pipe organ in America. And I got to do a live recording of that. And so you develop other kinds of chops that you never really get to use in the rock and roll context. And I'm grateful for that. I feel very well-rounded, and I love just knowing how to do all that stuff. When in doubt, on a big orchestral date or like a big choir in a big hall, get yourself the most expensive stereo mic. There's a brand called Schoeps. I believe they're made in Austria or Germany. Schoeps stereo mic with the rotating capsules where you can adjust the amount of stereo spread. They sound incredible. They're expensive. They're like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, maybe even $5,000. I don't know. Anyway, in the end, I close mic'd pretty much everything for that big gig, and then I took the Schoeps stereo mic and did it at an angle like that, which I guess would be called a 45-degree angle, suspended on a little flying thing that was hoisted up. And basically, I just had my assistant engineer pulling the rope on the pulley while I sat in the truck and shut my eyes and went, stop, right there. That's where it sounded best. All of a sudden, you could hear everything in that hall in perfect balance as if you were sitting in the best seat in the house. So we ended up not using like the other 50 inputs and only used 2 inputs on one stereo mic. Anyway, that's it. See you tomorrow for a really exciting episode of Taxi's Quarantini Happy Hour. Woohoo! How'd you do, Liz, flying solo for the first time? Bye, you guys. See you tomorrow.